But we'll start with the 11th century when there was a network of goldsmiths all over Europe. So we'll take one goldsmith in one town. He was the only person in that town that had a safe. He would make gold coins, jewelry, commemorative things, and he had the only safe that nobody could get into. So at a certain point, the wealthy people in the town came to the goldsmith and said, "Do you mind if we use your safe for our coins? We have all kinds of gold coins, and we're afraid that we'll be robbed by the peasants who are lusting after things like food, and they could come here, so can we use your safe?" And he said, "Okay, fine." And they said, "Just to make it fair, every time we do a transaction with you, when we take coins out, when we put coins in, you will get a fee." And he said, "Fine, that's terrific." And that's what they did. They would make the trip, they would put some in, take some out, he would change the receipts so that they always knew exactly how many coins they had in his safe. And this went on for quite a while. So at this point, he was a banker. He had become a banker. Now, after a while, because in those days they couldn't get to the goldsmith all that quickly, the people in the town who had their coins with him, when they would buy something new or they would hire servants, whatever, instead of going to the goldsmith, they would give the person, say he bought a new carriage, he would give the seller of the carriage a receipt, and he would sign it for how much of the gold coins he owed to the person that sold him the carriage, and that person would go to the goldsmith. He'd say, "Now, I don't want to go there. Here's my receipt. You go. You take the 5-mile trip, whatever. And he will give it to you because I signed a receipt for you." And so the creditors started going to the goldsmith themselves, and they would get the money out that they were owed. Now, after a while, the creditors got tired of making the trip to the goldsmith, so there were receipts out there. People had receipts, and they started making the receipts because they kept track of what was in the safe, and they would pay someone with an IOU. A receipt was basically an IOU. So receipts started getting passed around. People were just giving each other receipts based on the fact that they knew what they had in the safe. Now we come to a very important point here. One night, the goldsmith thought of this idea, was so brilliant. He was kept awake with this idea all night. And he said to the wife, she wasn't listening, she was already asleep, and he's saying, "Do you realize that in 6 months, only 3 people who have coins in my safe have come to actually get them out? I don't see these people. They're all out there passing around these receipts, trusting me, trusting what they know they have in my safe, and they're passing them all around." Anyway, she didn't care. She was asleep. He was awake all night. In the morning, he got up, went over to his desk, probably had a stiff drink first, went over to the desk, sat down, and he wrote 10 or maybe a dozen receipts. And he signed them, and in each one he had a different amount of coins, 20, 30, 10, 50. And he thought, now, I'm going to use these receipts just like everybody else in the town. Now, the one thing the goldsmith did not do was take his coins and put them in the safe so that his receipts were like everybody else's, and he had coins in there to cover his receipts. No. He preferred to hoard the gold, leave his coins out of the safe, but use the receipts anyway. And because he had earned the trust of these people, they believed when he paid for things with his receipts that there was gold in there to cover them, the same as with their receipts. Now at that point, he had gone from being a banker and getting transaction fees. He had gone from being a banker to creating money. Yes, he did not back his receipts. Now, at that point, only the king, the monarch, had the right to create money. He was doing something illegal and fraudulent, and he was doing it based on the trust of all the people that had given him their coins. So, he put the coins out there, he got a new carriage, moved into a bigger house, got some servants, became the pillar of the community. And no one knew, no one suspected that his receipts had nothing to back them. We trusted him. That's a con game, is it not? That's where a confidence game comes from. You get the trust, then you betray that trust, nobody else knows. So that's what was going on. So at that point, when he kept doing that, because his receipts kept going out there with nothing to back them, he was devaluing all the receipts of everyone else. Yes, he was. Every receipt he put out there made theirs worth less. Every one of them. And eventually, yes, it became banks. That's what happened. So this is basically what I'm telling you. This is how the fractional reserve system came about. Then, the second part was even more terrifying. He had another brilliant idea. One night, after he'd become the pillar of the community, and he diluted everybody's money, he thought to himself, if I can spend these receipts, I can lend these receipts, which is exactly what he started doing. And if you couldn't keep paying compound interest, not ordinary interest, compound interest, that's usually, if you could not keep on paying that compounding interest, then you lost real things. For his phony papers, when he called in his marker, you'd lose your house, your horse, your carriage, your servants. While he was coming up in the community and getting richer and richer, everyone else was losing what they had that was real. And this is exactly, it has not changed one iota. This formula has not changed. And today, whole countries, the BIS, the IMF, which I call the International Mugging Fraternity, all these banks, not only are they taking away all the wealth, as it started in a small village, they are taking away our resources that we need to stay alive. They are taking them away from the whole world. Countries are not businesses. And if they're treated as businesses, then that means you have to be cost effective. That means your health care goes. Everything to keep you alive goes, because you cannot treat countries as if they are corporations and businesses. They are not. So to get back to this, the IMF goes in, they restructure. The people can't even grow the crops they need to eat anymore. And that's what's going to happen to the whole world if we don't get rid of this crooked, sadistic system. That's why I call it the market de Sade. It is a sadistic system, and we must get rid of it. Now, people talk about, you go to all these meetings, privatization of healthcare, this and that. Wait, the first privatization was of our money supply.